Let's take this story quickly from Makeni, then we'll come to our guest to discuss some of the human rights issues proper. After the alleged shooting and killing of a police officer on Saturday by an unknown person, panic and fear gripped the minds of many residents of Makeni due to huge security presence, both at the crime scene and other major areas, as there was a restriction of movement in the township, which disrupted normal business. However, the security sector, including the Office of National Security and the Leone Police, have called on residents to go about their lawful normal business. Abasise, correspondent in Makeni, has more.
We are at the crime scene where allegedly the shooting and killing of ASP Mathew Gbanya happened. And this happened, between Station Road, Compound Street, and Campus Street Junction. And if you can see on the floor, there is still stain of blood and even pieces of windscreen, which happened as a result of that alleged shooting and killing, are still evident on the floor. And the neighborhood where this incident happened has been deserted.
Earlier today, there was restriction of movement in certain major streets of Makeni. The crime scene, which constitutes the central business district, was cordoned by security forces, and that entire neighborhood was deserted. The situation affects both social, political, and economic activities, as most Christians could not attend Easter service. Distribution of voter ID cards was delayed in many centers, and businesses could not run as usual. Therefore, security sector saw the need to make a statement on this prevailing situation in the city. Office of National Security Regional Boss Alfred Kamaga said, the situation is calm and members of the public should go about their normal business.
As people may be aware of what transpired yesterday, we are in a very senior police officer in the northern region was shot dead in cold blood. So people started going up and down, helter-skelter, for fear that, something else will happen to them. But this is not actually the case. They went on a self-imposed curfew order. So we are here today to allay their fears, to tell them to go back to their normal businesses, and that we have not imposed anything like curfew order.
While assuring the public for a swift investigation on this alleged shooting and killing of a police officer, Regional Police Commander AIG Sir Yomba Senesi as well called on residents to go back to their duties in the city.
We as an organization, especially from this end, when I say this, I met the Northeast region, are very much saddened about the shooting to death in cold blood of ASP Gbanya, who was the coordinator last night. We are very much saddened, and I want to say that investigation is ongoing. We want to get to the bottom of this matter because we cannot accept that. Very untenable. It's not good for society living. So that is why we are calling on the public to assist us in the investigation. But I want to say here that there is nothing like curfew in Makeni City. People can go about their normal business. If you want to go to the market, go to the farm, go to the mosque, because what we believe in is that as long as we have support of information to get the culprit or culprits of this whole matter, we're very much happy.
The deceased, ASP Mathew Gbanya, fondly known as Boyka, was Operational Support Division Regional Coordinator, Northeast Region, and it is unclear whether his remains has been conveyed to Freetown or not, as police boss did not comment on this. Though he did not mention the exact number of suspects in police nets, AIG Senesi confirmed that some arrests have been made in relation to this alleged killing. Abasise, AYV News, Makeni.
Well, thanks very much to Abasise for that report from Makeni.
Well, in our final segment this morning in the studio to evaluate the country's human rights issue ahead of the June 24th multi-tier elections, among other things, we have in the studio Victor Idrissa Lantana, who is the Vice Chairman, Sierra Leone's Human Rights Commission, and Alfonso Banyi, Executive Secretary of the Human Rights Defenders Network and Sierra Leone. And hopefully online will also be joining Abdul Karim Will, who is the Director of Communications at the Office of National Security, ONS. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure.
Yes,
morning,
and Alfonso, let me start with you. What you just watched are some of the eyebrows that will be raised, the factors that are all, you know, loopholes that will be seen as for issues of destruction or problems during elections. On what happened Saturday, sadly so, what are some of, you know, the loopholes that you think are there?
Well, thank you. The unfortunate incident on Saturday, April 8th, sends a dangerous precedent to our democracy and elections in this country. And more so, it happens in the headquarters of the main opposition party. So when you start to look at it from the security point of view towards election, it's not good for our election, and it's not good for the security apparatus, because if they could target the head of the operational support division of that region, it's telling you that we can target any other person below that rank. That is a security threat as we move towards the elections. When you're analyzing security issues that involve the killing of a security personnel, you start to look at who was killed, what is the rank. So when you start looking at the rank, and we now realize that it's the regional commander, it has a direct impact on the security operation. And it has an impact even on the lives of the community where this incident occurred. If you had a situation where they said, oh, they killed a couple. In fact, people will tend to look at it, even though it's somebody that was killed, but the rate at which they will be analyzing it or discussing the issue, it will be not raised to the level at which we are now looking at the issue of targeting a regional commander at that level. It shows you the high security threats we may be facing as we approach the elections.
The Sierra Leone Police is charged with the mandate, you know, to protect lives and properties of citizens. However, this sad, unfortunate incident that occurred shows, you know, little belief in their structure and in terms of the protection as well. Before I come to Victor, what would you have to say when it comes to civilians, when civilians are sometimes killed? You know, a lot of, you know, attention is being placed when civilian is killed. But today, or Saturday rather, we've seen, unfortunately, it's a police officer. What would you have to say on that?
Well, in fact, you see, it's unfortunate that we are witnessing this kind of pattern in this country. And I will keep saying that our politicians have placed the police in a negative way to the community they are protecting. And as you rightly said, the mandate, the constitutional mandate of the Sierra Leone Police is for the maintenance of law and order, at least prevention of crime, you know, and prosecution of crime or whatsoever. When you look at the role of the police, the executives, or particularly the politicians, have placed a police, creating a scenario that people we are now seeing as civilians, we are now seeing the police as enemies to the citizens of this country. And this has happened, government in, government out. And that's why sometimes we now say, we don't have a Sierra Leone police, because when you talk about Sierra Leone police, this is the aspect of democratic policing, where the police protect the lives of the citizens and the state or whatsoever. But when you talk about regime policing, this is the situation where the police is acting within the dictate of the government of that is in power. the government of the day, the party that is in power. And I will give you quick scenarios. The current government and the current Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs was on they were in the opposition. And he has all type of adjectives that he has given the police. How police are professional, they are bad, they are ruthless, whatsoever. Today, this is the same person that is now saying our Sierra Leone police are professionals. The APC government that were in power, they are now in opposition. At that time, the Sierra Leone police, they are perfect institution. They are good, they are professional. This is the same opposition party now, when we are making use of the police, using them against the citizens or against their own the opposition. Now they are now saying this same institution, they have not changed the institution. We have not changed anybody. The only people they have changed is the leadership that they have changed. These are the same police officers that were running the affairs of the state, maintaining law and order during the previous government. And now, this same body, the opposition now saying they are not professional. So which means the executive or the politicians have placed the police in a situation where we are not looking at them as enemies of the state, not even as friends. And they are risking their lives, despite the odds the police are facing. But the police are sacrificing their own lives for the maintenance of my own security, your own security, and everyone's security in this country. We need to give them the support that that is required of them.
Let me bring in Victor. Human rights laws are for everybody, regardless of, your profession. And unfortunately, again, we are in such times, and we are approaching the June 24th multi-tier elections. Certainly, there are loopholes. There are areas you need to work on more. There are areas, you have made your best as an institution. As we head towards the elections, what would you have to say in terms of respect for, people who are in their line of duty as they carry on with their jobs?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, let me use the opportunity to thank AYV for giving us, the Human Rights Commission, for giving us this platform, as always, to express our views on national issues. As a commission, we totally condemn, in the strongest of terms, the killing of the former head of region, OS head of region, Mr. Gbanya. It's very, very unfortunate, and every Sierra Leonean should be really, really angry. Every Sierra Leonean should really, really condemn this act, because it does not augur well for our peace and democracy, and it means that like Mr. Gbanya was saying, who is now safe? If a whole head of region, could be really, really assassinated, you and I are not safe. You are not safe to come to this studio to do your job. I'm not safe to do my job. Mr. Gbanya, as a civil society activist, is no longer safe to do his job. So we have to ensure that all of us concertedly come together and condemn this act, just as we have condemned, instances of police unprofessionalism. It is the same way we should come on board to ensure that we condemn everyone, all those who are involved in that killing, because we are very certain that that person who did that killing did not do it all by himself. Now, going back to your question, the loopholes, whether citizens should really respect law enforcement officers, that is given. It is very clear. The Constitution, in fact, it is a constitutional mandate that is placed on every Sierra Leonean. I refer to Section 13 of the Constitution. It is very clear. Paragraph J is saying that every Sierra Leonean must render assistance to law enforcement officers in the protection and promotion of security in this country, in the maintenance and order of this country. And so, people have to understand that the Constitution is the biggest law. It is the supreme law. And once it says, or it makes provision for several issues, then we have to abide, whether it's state institution or public servant or ordinary Sierra Leoneans. So in this case, it really it places the obligation on ordinary Sierra Leoneans to ensure that they abide by the dictates of the society, of the country, and it's very clear also to say that they must respect institutions created by the Constitution, individuals appointed by the Constitution, and all other, tenets of good governance in society. So yes, the laws are there, and we must follow the laws. It's very clear that citizens have been given the duty to ensure that they assist the police in ensuring that there is law and order in every nook and cranny of this country. That is what we want to see. And going forward, like you said, when we are talking to Mr. Gbanya, we are heading to the elections. and we need security. By this time, what we should be discussing really are policies. We have to discuss policies about the next 5 years of our country. What do politicians intend to come and give us? How do they intend to change the situation? How do they intend to change the narrative? So that is what we should be discussing, and not discussing violence. Nobody gains from violence. For instance, you that is in government, if there is violence, you cannot govern well. And you that is trying to come to governance, to take over government, if there is violence, for instance, elections may not even hold, or there may be some skirmishes that will really affect the outcome of the elections. So the only way for us to have, a better society is when we maintain law and order, is when we are peaceful. And by the way, over 30 years ago, Sierra Leone as a country, we decided, to say no more to violence. We said the war, we ended the war. And it was time for us, we decided collectively as the people, that we have to come together to now really, war on wars, okay? Not to hold the guns or daggers or machetes as it used to be in the dark days. So we cannot afford to go back to those dark days where, there was violence, there was brutality, the crudest of forms we have seen. So it is something that we have to ensure that as a people, as a country, we come together collectively and protect this peace that, our people died for, our forefathers died for. People who were really maimed, people who were killed, to get this peace. And normally I will refer to people to read the TRC report. The TRC report is the best document, in my opinion, that has been ever produced in this country. And therefore, Sierra Leoneans, ordinary Sierra Leoneans, public servants, they must read the TRC report and see the findings of the war, why we went to war, and the recommendations that are provided therein in that report.
And it seems those signs are still with us, the things that are happening, across the country, whether in politics or human rights issues as well. As a commission, with what happened in Makeni on Saturday, there was another incident in Makeni last year in 2022, also in other years. You've been doing reports, findings, recommendations. How do we get to enforce or implement these recommendations to address these issues, just so that you build some confidence between the law enforcement agencies and the public, which seems to be lacking?
Yes, so that is very important. When there is lack of trust, or when there is mistrust between the governed and the governors, in this case, put it that way, it breeds so much, animosity, and that is what I've said. I've maintained over the years that both the governed, and the governors, they have to understand that there should be a common ground so that people are able to cohabit properly. And the Commission has the responsibility, the primary mandate to protect and promote human rights of all in this country. It doesn't matter your religion, your region, your ethnicity. And as a matter of fact, that is what we have been doing. And like you said, we have been putting out reports. We have come to this...
With recommendations as well.
Yes, we have come to this platform. We have used several other platforms. We have, for instance, that has to do with the police. We have challenged the police in their phases. We have told them that you have to do more. You have been very unprofessional. And recommendations have been proffered. So we have been calling on the police to ensure, and to address the concern you are raising, to ensure that those recommendations that normally we put forward, they must ensure that they respect those recommendations, because the Commission is a statutory body, and the police must be seen as a respecter of statutory bodies. But that is not the case for today. Today we are really discussing the death of the OSD officer.
But there are precedents to that. Why I ask that is about building confidence between, the public. Issues like this that are happening, you just saw the reports. People are scared, they are not coming out. People who might want to go and do their businesses, their rights as well might be, not be protected as well. They are in fear. The point I'm making is, how do we get to build trust? In situations like this, like what has happened in Makeni, a police officer was killed. You have people who are staying there. How do you build trust between the law enforcement agency and the public to understand that this is an incident that is very unfortunate, but as well, people need to live in peace, and their rights needs to be respected as well?
Yes, Lamana, so the foremost ways in which we can really ensure that there is trust and there is confidence, between, for instance, the police, or between government and citizens, is for both parties, to ensure that they respect their own rules. So every party or every individual has his or her own role. So now in this instance, the government, or let's say the police, has the responsibility to ensure that they discharge their mandate professionally. And the citizens themselves, they have the responsibility, as per the Constitution, Section 13 that I've cited already, to ensure that they respect law enforcement officers, to ensure that they respect institutions created by the Constitution, to respect individuals that have been appointed under the Constitution. Once both parties actually behave this way, they respect their different mandates, then I'm sure there will be trust and there will be peace and security in our country.
Okay. As well, I want to ask, is it about the issue of impunity? You know, in a situation where whether a civilian is involved or law enforcement officer is involved in this, and you come out with your recommendation and report and actions are not taken. Is it that we're getting to a point where people want to take the law into their own hands because there seems to be some level of impunity? So
yes, impunity is one of the biggest problems we're having. It's something that the TRC really went to town with. The TRC made so much emphasis on how impunity actually led to our 11 years civil carnage. It's very important for us to discuss that. You know, when we put out reports, we have recommendations. By the way, every year we publish our State of Human Rights reports, and there are recommendations in those reports. We expect that those individuals who the Commission will say, are responsible for human rights violations, they are brought to book. Individuals or institutions should take that measure to ensure that they address those violations, and so that once you see that there is a precedent or there is an example that has been set, against a particular or against your colleague, then others will not actually follow suit. They will ensure that they engage professionally. So impunity is a very serious problem, and yes, even also citizens generally, you'll see instances where people would actually misbehave, they will be lawless. At the end of the day, nothing comes out of it. And it becomes a serious, it emboldens other citizens to say, I can take the laws into my hands and nothing comes out of it. So that is a serious problem. And the state, has to take the lead to ensure that we address impunity. And by the way, I have to state this again. It doesn't mean that because, for instance, the Human Rights Commission, does the reports, presents its findings and recommendations, and the police may pick and choose. I have to also state that it's not always the case that the police has, given a blind eye to our recommendations, but in some cases they actually take steps. So, but it is not. I meant to say that it is not always it is not the case that because they don't take the appropriate measures, therefore people to take the laws into their hands. Because otherwise, we actually breed a situation. Way back when Thomas Hobbes, for instance, would say the state was brutish and nasty, it was only the people with the strongest muscles who survive. We don't want to see that kind of system or state in our country. We have passed that stage. Like I said, 30 years ago, we decided to shut down the guns. So it's now time for us to sit down and dialogue on national issues and forget about politics. So, Lamana, one of the issues that really, for us as a commission that disturbs us is the fact that when national issues occur, you see politicians or you see people, fans of politicians, fans of political parties, they come and twist the entire issue and then it becomes a political matter. It then becomes APC versus SLPP so that the perpetrator will walk free at the end of the day. So that is what, as a people, we have to understand that national issues should be treated as national issues and address them head on without actually having to undermine it with political discussions. It's a very serious concern for us as a commission. Okay, let me go over to Alfonso now. The August 10 incident was one of, the highlights of violence, of disruption, and these were key findings from one of the reports that I read, and it states that, children who were unfortunately, I should say, were part of all of that, demonstrations were held, were taken by the Sierra Leone Police, and unfortunately they were sent to the Sierra Leone Correctional Center instead of approved school or, the juvenile center. So from the human rights perspective, what are some of, the gaps or the loopholes that should be proffered, recommendations should be proffered for in those areas, that children should not be sent to the Sierra Leone Correctional Center, but rather juvenile centers?
In the first place, let's look first at the action and look at the reaction. Yeah. It is wrong for whosoever or any person to involve children in public demonstration. It is wrong, and it was wrong. And at any point in time they use them, it will also be wrong. We followed that situation. I think it was something like in Binkolo where we saw from the video clips or whatsoever, you know, children, adults, and these school people, children in fact, right, taking, you know, chanting, we don't matter, viewers go, in fact, we don't have food, we don't have all these things. It was wrong. And so they don't need to involve the kids. Let's don't involve our kids in our own political ideologies. It is wrong, and it was wrong. And so when the police were doing their own crackdown, you know, trying to enforce the law, which is their own constitutional mandate as established in the section 155 that sets the assignment of the Leone Police, they were arresting people randomly, and we believe at that time they also arrested a number of children. But when they were engaged with the number of the commission, some of us, and child protection agencies, they released really the kids at that time. They were released. But by and large, we know that many times when police do arrest, they don't take these kids to approved schools or remand homes because of the facilities. So probably the Ministry of Gender and Children's Affairs need to do more to make sure, because if you don't want kids that your institution is mandated to protect to be among criminals, you should also ensure that you create the facilities where if they are in contact or in conflict with the law, they could be placed on a temporary basis where they are where justice is being taken.
I want to ask you the same question I asked, Victor. The issue of building confidence between law enforcement and the public. On August 10th, we saw where police officers were killed, civilians were killed as well, and we just saw what happened in Makeni. Police are still investigating the matter, but with your own assessment, you've been, bringing out reports, we've been talking about human rights issues in the past 5 years and all. How do we get to the point where we get citizens to understand their roles and responsibilities, as well as the law enforcement agencies? We will not have situations where, officers who as well have the responsibility to protect us are being killed. How do we build that confidence and that trust? We are getting to elections.
Yeah, before I could respond to that, let me just lay a premise about the police. I am fortunate that I have lived among my relatives that are police officers. Some are dead, some are still alive, including two of my own blood brothers. I'm talking about the same father, the same mother. They were all OSGs. They are deceased now. So I know what it means to be a police officer because I have lived with them. I know the challenges they are facing. And some of my uncles, one is late, Bani, and one is still living. Munu, who was at the IG, is in Makeni. So I know what it means to be a police officer. And I have a number of friends in the police force. So when you start to look at the challenges they face, and you look at where they place themselves in society constitutionally, and you see the role that the politician, the issue of building trust and confidence between the civilian population and the Sierra Leone police, it's not an issue just between the police and the civilian population. It's about the responsibility of the leadership of the two major political parties that are managing the state of affairs of this country. The SLPP and the APC executive. They have to take the bold decision to say, look, let us don't put police in harm's way, because the way they use the police, the way they place the police in the conduct of public order management, they put the police in harm's way and creating discontent between the police and the civilian population. So to me, if we want to build trust and confidence, the first, we have to dismantle the perception and the way the leadership of these two major political parties are looking at or using and misusing the Sierra Leone police. If we start from that angle, there will be peace and tranquility, and there will be trust and confidence between the civilian population and the Sierra Leone police. The second aspect is, how do we also strengthen the local police partnership board to enhance their role in society, to give support to the work of the Sierra Leone police? And I think if we want to test that, the incident that occurred in Makeni recently could be a test case as to how we civilians could also show our own support to protect the police force. So if you want the police to protect us, I think I want to see a situation where civilians will help the police to investigate and identify the perpetrators of this unfortunate incident in Makeni on April 8th. Once we help that, it will build the confidence. It will help build the confidence as we approach the election. If that fails, I'm telling you, from the security standpoint, I'm not a security personnel. I'm not a security officer, but because of my job, I've done a number of security training and analysis, so I know what it means. If that fails, it poses a serious threat as we move towards the elections.
Are we at a point where it is us versus them? Say, we have a situation where civilians will see not the police not as people who protect them, but as people who they could attack if they have any given opportunity, to challenge their authority. Because it's this, like Victor was saying, you have people who go on social media who say things about the police being against their political party, the police not being fair. You have politicians who have even named the police force as a regime police in some extent. Is it that we're getting to that point?
We are getting to that point. When we are getting to that point from the political perspective, nobody will go and attack a police officer because of a criminal matter. The only time you see people attacking police officers to the extent of even lynching them is on political basis. And I will give you some examples. Just after the 2018 elections that brought the SLP-led government to power, we saw how civilian population attacked the police station in Kenema. That's just an example. They will only attack police officers because of political ideology and identity, and which is dangerous in this country. If you look at the August 10 incident, you technically look at it, there's no way you can devoid politics from it. It's more politically motivated. And you see how they attack and lynch police officers. Take this incident in Makeni. There is no way you can relate that incident to a criminal suggestion. There is no way, to me personally, from the way I've started, from the day that incident occurred, I've been calling a number of people in Makeni trying to analyze the situation. And when you listen to the audio messages that are coming out, it tells you automatically that it has nothing to do on criminal-related issue, but it's more political. I've listened to some video messages on that April 8th incident. And someone said, in quote, but I bet what they kill him. But look what they go kill Samson the last time, this and that, and I see where they kill him. This is what we are saying as Sierra Leoneans. We are celebrating the death of a senior police officer that is in charge with the responsibility to protect us. Even when we are sleeping, they are walking, they are on the roads, they are on the streets, on night patrols, trying to protect us. No matter what the wrongs they do to us, but they are putting their lives in harm's way to protect me and you, and even to protect the ballot box that we may going to vote, to cast our vote come June 24, 2023. So the issue is not about we, the civilian population and the police. It's about how the politicians are using the gullible civilian population, using their own political identity to confuse them, to look at the Sierra Leone police as enemies. We are not looking at the Sierra Leone police as enemies from the criminal perspective. We are looking at them as enemies from the political perspective. And that should stop.
Okay, let me bring in, excuse me, Lamana, let me bring in Victor again here. There are repercussions to all of these human rights issues and skirmishes that when it happens in many parts of the world. And I want to take you to a particular section here that says, although there were 50 active state councils, this has to do with the August 10 incident. Although there were 50 active state councils, public defenders, the majority worked in the capital and were often overburdened, poorly paid, and available only for more serious criminal cases. So this again places a lot of burden on what you do and state councils as well. So what I want to ask you now is that, again, according to the Human Rights Commission Sierra Leone, there were reports of individuals held for questioning without being promptly informed of the reason for their arrest. So in cases like this, what are some of the things you get to do to curb this situation so that people do not go with the idea that they are not aware of what they are being arrested for?
Yeah, I think you are referring to the U.S. State Embassy report. Yeah. You know, we have done, I mean, extensive work in terms of what police do in arresting people and trying to maintain law and order. We have come out with recommendations, and we have engaged the police to ensure that, you know, like you talked about juvenile detention, to get the police to understand that there are standards, there are laws, both national laws and international laws, that really, I mean, prescribe ways in which you can do things. So when you arrest, the constitution is very simple, it's very clear. Section 17, you have to inform the person. Why are you arresting me? Inform the person of the crime he or she may have committed, that you are alleging that he or she may have committed. That is the first thing you do. And then you have to ensure that you speedily investigate that matter. If it's for misdemeanors, that is, I mean, minor crimes, you cannot keep that person above 3 days, okay? And if it's for, I mean, economic offenses, very serious or felonious offenses, you cannot keep that person above 10 days. But we, as a commission, we have been doing several investigations. We have done several monitoring activities. We have had situations where the police, I mean, have kept people even beyond the constitutional time limit, whether it's 10 days or the minimum 3 days. So it's a very serious concern. And like Lamana was asking, these are ways in which you can actually, I mean, restore confidence and trust between the people and law enforcement authorities when you go by the books. And there are cases... only when you go by the books, you know, you can get confidence in the people. That is what we are crying for. That is what we are actually pushing for, that the police should listen to the Human Rights Commission, because we have expert knowledge in human rights issues. When you provide advice, when you provide pieces of advice and recommendations, it is their own place to ensure that they respect those pieces of advice and ensure that the recommendations put forward are really addressed. So it's a situation that we are working on, and we continue to engage the police. Going back to the death of this our brother, I mean, the late Gbanya, when you look at the way in which he was assassinated, it just reminds me of what we used to see on Al Jazeera or CNN, in Baghdad, where people just go. I mean, you have a motorcycle or a kind of a taxi or something. You just go and then you see a crowd, and then you launch your whatever ammunition you have, or somebody you want to kill. I mean, shoot and kill, and then you drive off. That is the end. We don't want to see such kind of situation actually come into our country. It is very, very risky, and that is why we have to ensure, as the people, we put our feet down to condemn this incident, to ensure that it doesn't occur, because it puts all of us. It doesn't matter whether you're in government, it doesn't matter whether you're in opposition, it doesn't matter whether you have nothing to do with politics. Just as an ordinary Sierra Leonean, it puts all of us in danger. Because when you're passing down the street, nobody, I mean, you don't have a placard or a sign on top of a fist that, oh, I'm supporting SLP, oh, I'm supporting APC or NGC. You are a Sierra Leonean, you are somebody passing around. So anybody can mistake you for another person. Maybe even by the dress. They will say, oh, she's putting on black or green or red. So she becomes a target. So we have to ensure that we go after, the police have to ensure that they investigate this issue, and they must investigate this issue promptly, so that we see in our eyes that investigations are completed within time, within record, so that it will really, really forestall any other intent. Because there is a problem here. Let me just conclude on this. We have been following, we have been monitoring, even before the incident of April 8th, before Saturday. We have been monitoring the social media. We have seen clearly, I mean, threats coming out from whether it's Facebook or TikTok or I mean, the widely used social media platform, WhatsApp, where people have been sending out audio messages. People have been writing all sorts of threats. And in fact, now, I saw a video where somebody even took upon himself to say, I am responsible. I was saying, are we down to this? Mm-hmm. We are seeing that one in terrorist countries where people do atrocities, they commit violence, all of it, they come back to say, I am responsible, or we are responsible for the killing of these people. So that is not the kind of state we want to maintain. It does not. No matter how, for instance, we have...
Victor, how will the Human Rights Commission and other partners engage on some of these signs, some of these issues, in the build of the elections? We are like 3 months to the elections. And these, you mentioned the TRC reports, and these are signs, and these are things that have been happening. How do you intend to engage as a commission, to engage the public, as well as law enforcement agencies in addressing these issues?
It's a very relevant question, Alamani, that you've asked. We've been hearing of the cybercrime unit of the police. Mm-hmm. So the question then becomes, what are they really up to? What are they doing? Because these things are really, they are planned. Like we saw for August 10, it started with August 8th, 9th, and then we had 10. So we had several videos coming up, audios, write-ups. We believe, we are of the opinion that that is why the cybercrime unit, for instance, exists, to ensure that they go after intelligence and ensure that they are able to nip in the bud whatever, proposed problems or calamity that people may want to actually befall on the state. I want to refer you to our press statement of the 12th of August 2022. This was a press statement in respect of the August 10 incident. I'll just read one paragraph that has to do with recommendations. Mm-hmm. Okay? It says, to this end, HRCSM makes the following recommendations, and I will read its second recommendation. Number 2, it says that the security sector should do all it can to recover arms and ammunition that are in the wrong hands, as was observed during the protest. Such arms pose a threat to the enjoyment of the right to life and security of persons. Let me take the last sentence. Such arms pose a threat to the enjoyment of the right to life and security of persons. So we had earlier called on the security sector to ensure that they go after, they do a kind of mop-up or investigations, or a search, put it that way, a search to ensure that they collect all of those guns that have gone into the wrong hands. We saw clearly that during the August 10 protest, there were civilians who were carrying guns. And civilians are not meant to carry guns, except for those who get a license from the Small Arms Commission. But otherwise, anybody who actually carries a gun is actually doing it, unlawfully. So we had seen this. We had seen this, and we had recommended strongly that the security sector should ensure that they do a search to areas that are prone to violence, to ensure that they retrieve those guns, so that we cannot have a situation like this, where a whole head of a region will be killed. So if that man is killed, my mom, who is in the village, is no longer secured. Yeah. The Abacha street woman is no longer secured. Anybody can come and kill and then drive off. That is a very serious problem. Okay. We have to ensure that concertedly as the people, and the security force sector should ensure that they take the lead to ensure that we are able to address this issue as we go into elections. We
must clearly state that we've been trying to get the security sector on this conversation, but unfortunately we could not get hold of them on the program. So we'll continue to try to have them to discuss further on how they implement some of these recommendations that are very important. As well, Alfonso, I'll ask you about, these recommendations. I'm sure yourself, as an organization, the Human Rights Defenders Network, you've come out with recommendations, position on certain issues, enforcing them to address some of these things we're having now ahead of the elections. What do you think? What will you recommend that needs to be done, to address human rights issues, to build confidence and trust between the public and the police?
Well, in the first place, we have to speak to our political leaders that they should stop the abuse of power. And as we speak, there is a case of one James, a C4C member who was arrested on the 20th of March in Kono district, Kwedutong, when they were having a meeting in the C4C office. He was arrested by police officers, brought to Freetown. To date, he's still in custody for alleged utterance of threatening remarks against one of his colleagues' youth in 2019. And this is done by another party member who is now in parliament. On his own instruction, police arrested that gentleman, brought him to Freetown, and he's still in custody without charge or bail since the 20th of March. I'm bringing this because it gives you the platform when I talk about what creates the problem of people distrust or attack on the police officers. It's purely political. So if the C4C group, I'm not saying about those that have just, transferred themselves or declared support to the ruling party. So if another group say we are not satisfied, we want to get our brother back. So it creates that problem between the community and the police. So when you have your power, at what level, at what time the police will really look at an issue that they believe reasonably does not amount to any arrest and detention, and advise the person or the leadership that no, we cannot manage this situation. We are not seeing that type of issue yet within the police. So I think one of the critical things for the police also should have their own sense of reasoning. That this one, I don't think we should carry this action. But the problem is, Section 156 of our Constitution also creates the establishment of the police council. And that police council, you have the vice president, the minister of internal affairs, the IGP, and they're in that police council and they advise. So how comes where the IG could tell the vice president that action we don't need to take it? So it also creates a problem. But I think we need to create a scenario where the police should be independent in doing their job.
Okay.
If we have that opportunity in this country, I think it will help a lot. It will create the balance for community to support the police and police to do their job independently and become...
As human rights organizations as well, what will you be doing quickly, ahead of these elections? How will you be engaging? What support or efforts will you be giving? Because what we see presently is very scary and alarming for all of us. It could have been any one of us. What do you think you can do as a civil society organization to help with the process?
Of course, for us as an institution, our first primary responsibility is the safety and security of our membership. The safety and security of every human rights defender that will be involved in the electoral process in this country. That's our first parameter. The second thing is that for them to be engaged in analyzing security threats, looking at the risk, sharing that information where we think there is potential risk or threat that is facing that community. We engage the authorities that we think we should engage. We are also engaging political leadership, political parties, that if there is a problem, let's assume that there's confusion. The confusion will be, it will be at the disadvantage of the opposition. If there is anything that creates confusion for a postponement of this election, it will be at an advantage of the ruling party, the president. He will continue in office. The opposition, you will not gain power. So what they need to do, because that's the message we have to tell the political parties, if there is anything, for God forbid, that there's a confusion, there's a problem that will create a situation where the election will be postponed, it will be the disadvantage of you, the political party, because opposition, because you want to gain power. So what you need to do is to maintain the peace. Talk to your supporters. Don't create any problem in a situation where the ruling party may want to take advantage of that situation. So that is the message the political parties need to take to their supporters, so that we don't have any scenario or to a situation they say, no, this area has a problem. Let us, how they call it, we declare these ballot papers, or we cancel them because of the confusion. So they need to engage their political supporters, because for any reason where there is a small opportunity, the other side will use it. So what we need to do, they need to tell their supporters, let us maintain the peace and let us vote peacefully and go back to our homes and listen to the electoral process or the results.
Thank you very much, Alfonso. And Victor?
Yes, for us as a commission, we have already launched our elections preparedness strategy, which has 5 pillars. We are going to look at complaint handling. We ensure that we have a situation room where we handle complaints. So we are a problem-solving institution. So where there are complaints of human rights issues, then we are able to address them to the appropriate authorities so that they are able to solve. And then, of course, we have also the area of capacity building. We are going to ensure that we train election monitors and put them, on the field to be able to assist us to do monitoring. So monitoring is also another pillar under the strategy. We are going to continue. We have already started monitoring. So there is pre, post, and during, and during, and post election monitoring. So we are going to ensure that we do that to see whether the human rights component, because that is what we actually monitor, the human rights component of elections are really are there too. So whether it's about the right to freedom of expression, the right to vote, the right to freedom of assembly and association, all of these are the components that we will be looking at, because that is what concerns us as the commission. And then also we'll be looking at we'll be doing our reports to ensure that we have a special report on elections, special elections report, which will actually have findings, recommendations that we now launch and ensure that we are able to engage the appropriate authorities, including the president, whosoever may be the president by then, so that we don't have a recurrence of any issues that we may have actually seen or found out during our monitoring. Okay. So we appeal. I want to use the opportunity to appeal to Sierra Leoneans that Sierra Leone is the only country we have. We have to ensure that we maintain law and order, respect institutions created in the Constitution, respect authorities that are there to safeguard us, authorities that are there to ensure that we have peace and order in our country. That is the only way we can go. If there is violence, like Mr. Gbanya said, if there is violence, it will not actually bode well for anybody. Nobody benefits from violence. So all have to ensure that we maintain the peace and ensure that we go out there and vote in our numbers peacefully, and then we also wait to see the results. We use the opportunity to call on, again, ECSL, for ECSL to ensure that the elections are conducted in a free and fair manner, to ensure that there is credibility in the elections, so that at the end of the day, everybody will accept, or majority of Sierra Leoneans will accept the results, and governance will continue. That is what, as the Commission, we call for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.